A question I like to ask right off the bat is, how does this film make you feel? What emotions does it evoke in you? Or how did it make you look at the world in a different way? In Privy, the guy is digging and digging and digging to find these buried treasures and then to sell them. But I would kind of want to go deeper with my group and ask them, what do you think this digging symbolizes? And think about his name, Will. That's a very powerful name. We're all willful creatures. We make choices, and it's important that we exercise our will in a positive way. Why do you think the writers of this film named him Will? How does that relate to his digging and to the consequences of his decisions? Another thing I'd want to talk about in teaching this film or leading a small group would be the whole idea of temptations. And where do temptations come from? Do they come from inside of us or outside of us? There's a great line in the movie where Darby, who's kind of the Satan character, says, "I reveal who you already are." What does he mean by that? How do temptations reveal parts of us? Maybe parts of us we really don't want to deal with. Another thing this film deals with a lot is greed. How do you deal with greed? And when you want something really badly and you're tempted even to steal or to lie or to get it, how does that affect you? This film deals a lot with tensions in the family and how Will has to make a decision. Will he give this money up to give his mom this treatment that could help her? So I think exploring those whole tensions of learning to sacrifice. Another theme it talks about to me is redemption and restoration. And that is, how do you dig down into your life and look at the garbage of your life, and how can that be recycled in a positive way? Why do people say that beauty can come from tragedy? What does that look like in your life or the life of people that you've known? A major theme in this film is the whole issue of deception. And it's really hard talking about deception because when you're being deceived, you don't know you're being deceived. So it's almost like, how do you deal with that? Is there anything in your life that you might be deceived by? Or talk about some common temptations. What are some temptations you know that some of your friends deal with? Because you're not going to talk directly about your own temptations in that kind of setting. And then again, how do we deal with temptations in a positive way? And that's a very important theme this film evokes. And also talking about consequences. The problem with Will in the film, as you know, is that he didn't see the consequences, how one decision led to another decision, which led to another decision, and how the consequences kept getting amped up. So talk to the students about that, about how a little lie leads to a medium-sized lie, which leads to a big lie, and how the consequences are amped up. One of the themes this film deals with is the whole issue of spiritual warfare. A verse that's mentioned is that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, against things that we can see and touch and feel, but there are actual spiritual forces. So ask the students, what do they think about spiritual warfare? How do you feel about the idea that there is actually an evil presence, or perhaps even a devil, that tempts us to do things? Another interesting angle there in talking about spiritual warfare is how Darby / the devil, how he worked to really sway Will. I mean, he went in and entered into something that Will was good at, which was digging and finding these antique bottles. And how many times we have this kind of cartoon idea of what a devil's like. He's dressed in red and horns and a pitchfork and all that, so blatant. But that's not true. The devil is very deceptive. He can come to us as something very appealing, even a mentor, a guru, if you would. So talk about how we can be deceived even in good areas in our lives. A great scene in Privy is the scene where they're in the garden, I think, and Will finally gains enough willpower, if you would, to start smashing these bottles. What do you think that represents? Why did he start smashing the bottles? And what were the consequences of that decision that Will made? Another question that's asked in this film, Privy, implicitly is the whole idea of evil and suffering. When Will asks the question, why did God allow my mom to have this? Why do we as a family have to go through this incredible, painful situation every single day? And that question and not receiving an answer, I guess, is kind of what caused Will to drift away from the church. Perhaps you can talk to your students about other why questions. What are some of the big why questions we might ask to others or perhaps even to God that cause us to doubt and maybe even drift away from Him?